we've gone along and we've smoothed out, we've checked, sanded, and to be honest, we've redone this top area, making sure that obviously got no seam lines, anything else down in there, anything else like that. Gone around, checked it all everywhere, but the thing is we picked up a lot of roughness, so some of this mottling effect you can probably see over this isn't paintwork or fancy weathering, that's just literally where I've sanded it down everywhere, and just use a cloth as well to go, and you can probably see over on my fingers still getting a bit of dust, and that is because of the fact that it's just been sanded so often. So what we're going to do, we've got a little bit of kitchen towel, and if you do it dry, you'll probably see you get a little bit of residue. So what we're going to do is just put tiniest amount onto the cloth, give it a good wring out because we want it just to be damp, and we're just going to give this a very light run over. We're not trying to make it wet, but as you can see, lots of dust, and it's this dust that will make very rough texture. You get some people, and you often get when they're spraying, and they can never work out quite why they've got a grainy, gritty finish. It's this dust particles. What happens is that all your paint, as it's flying through the air and things like that, literally stick to the particles, and then they stick to your model, which gives you a very rough finish. Okay, and as you can see, we've got plenty of it under here, but this will make the difference between a very nice finish, totally smooth, things like that, and having a really rough finish. So we just carefully work our way around, try not to hook it on doors and things like that. But there you go. But as you can see, you get plenty of it on here, and that would be attached to your model now. So okay, we're all happy with the finish. Now, the trouble is with the old instructions, being Revell, their own concoction. Now, the thing is with this one, we're going to be doing it pretty heavy weathered, and when we say weathered, we mean faded down and touched in, things like that. So the paint codes don't have to be spot on to perhaps a degree where if you were doing it factory fresh. So for that, what we're actually going to use is a bit of concoction. For the black colour, we're going to use Tire Black, because it's actually got that sort of blue-grey hue to it. Then obviously you could use NATO Black, which would probably be the more correct colour, but because we're going to lighten it, and to save me buying another bottle, we're just going to use Tire Black. Now the colours itself is like a two-tone green system, so what we're going to use RLM 80 for one of the greens. Okay, in this case we're using extra acrylics, so this is just XA 1215. Okay, and then for the other one, for the green colour itself, it's got that sort of, I don't know, bronzy green, flat type of dead colour. So we're going to use Forest Green, which is FS 34079, also known as H309 for your guns colour. But you could get away with using olive drab type colours, a bronze green and a black, and do it like that. But as I said, we're going to fade them up, so we're going to be using lashings of XF2 flat white in amongst it with all the paints. Even though they're all different paints, we're still going to be using XF2. If you wanted to, another colour that's very close to it, it would be Tamiya's olive green, because it has that tender bronzy green type colour to it. So there we go. It's an all-over wraparound camo, so there's no area. It's not like we've got to do one side grey, everything else. It's going to be full camo and faded back. So for that, I'm not going to even worry about going to be actually pre-shading and things like that. So it's literally straight in with the paintwork. Okay, for this, we're going to start with the lightest colour first. So for our case, what we're actually going to do, we're going to start off with the forest green colour, or the H309. So we're going to give this a good old shake up all over. Now the thing is, you see different reference photos of this particular aircraft, you see different colours and the way it's painted and all like that, so it's a bit of artistic license. But what I'm going to do, we're going to stick to the camo pattern that's actually on the instruction sheet, and then we'll use a little bit of artistic license to move it around and things like that. It's two-tone green. The greens are extremely close together in colour as they are in real life, so we're going to be doing the same. So what we'll do, we'll just grab our airbrush, going to put our colour on the top. Now I've got a bit of leftover black in here, so we're just going to blow all of that out and just give it a very quick colour change. Now because it's going to be all over weathered in colours, things like that, you don't have to worry too much about perhaps how things are going to be. So when we're changing colours and we're thinning and lightening and darkening and that, to keep it as random as possible is good. So we're going to make up colours in the colour cut as we go. So all we're going to do, we're going to take some thinners. Now we're going to take some of the green in here. Okay, and then what we're going to do is take some of the white. Just like so. And then all we're going to do is take our brush. He says, look at the brush, there's the brush. Take one solid brushful of white straight into the colour cup and give it a good old mix. That immediately changes the colour to a far lighter shade, but then obviously we can go back and then go in darker to touch up and obviously use the different greens as we move around the entire build. So for this one we're going to turn down the air pressure just a little bit, so we're going to go down to about 20 psi. Okay, as you can see down here it's quite a light colour. Keeping our instructions rotated for how we're going to actually paint it. So we're going to start on the back and everything else, which will also move down. You can spray them as separate. So the way I'm going to try and run this is, I'm going to run it from lightest colour to darkest as it is on the instructions. So to start with, up here we've got a line that's going to swirl down the side of the engine. Something like this. So we're putting it in very light and random. No, we're not going to worry about masking up and things like that. We're just going to, for the moment, write this camo pattern onto the actual aircraft. So we've got a type of line like this, and then we've got it coming round. It sort of squares off as it comes down this back area, and then back down round, and it's going to meet up with a difference. So we just pop that in. That's one of our colours in here, so we just lightly mark that to be painted up. Okay, and then it's going to be darker on the outside of the wing, so the next light one is going to be here on the inside of the wing. So we've got another one where it's sort of, just watching how this comes down. Just sort of walk in here like this, and then it's just going to come into this back area, and all we're doing really is just working out where lines are, things like that. We've got another line that's going to come up over the back here, and it's going to come down to a pinch in here. Okay, off on the tail we've got a tiny swirl in here, then we've got another one, a bit tricky to get to in here. Okay, then it's going to come up into the fuselage, up onto the tail, and this other one is just going to wrap in up here. So what we can do for the moment is just literally paint these areas in. So we're just going in for the moment, solid colour. Okay, just trying to keep it nice. As I say, this one's the easy one because we're literally you're just putting it on quite heavily. And because it's a wraparound camo, obviously we've got to do the sides and we've got to do the tops and everything else like that. So we're just going to complete this camo work. So top of the engine. So pop in your full colours. As I say, this is the easy one because we don't have to worry about how we're spraying it, or we don't have to be particularly neat. The only thing you need to do is go slightly further than you would, because it's the lighter colour. The darker ones will overcoat this and be more heavy on it. So we're just making sure those pinch in like so. So I'll just carry on spraying this first coat on, and then we can get together to see the second coat going on and how we're going to work out the camo and the edges and effects and things like that. Okay, so there we go, that's phase 1 done. So phase 2, changing over to the other green, so this is over to the RLM 80. So exactly the same type of thing we're doing for the minute. We're just going to chuck the thinners in first. There you go, in, and in with the colour. Now, as I said, this isn't, or shouldn't, hopefully, be a million miles away from what we've got already. Being extra acrylics, always put the top on. If the stuff gets dry, it gets a skin, and then it's a bit of a problem. Clean of the old brush. So we've got our white paint just down here. I'm just going to grab a brush full again into it. So hopefully, because this is slightly a different colour, it will give a slightly different thing. Excuse the dogs. You can tell the summer's coming. Right. Okay, so we just do that. Pop that out of the way, put the lid back on there. Okay, check our flow. Okay, so this is the darker colour green. So what we're going to do is just work out a plan of action on how to hold, manoeuvre the model. That's the other thing, because obviously we're going to have wet areas to touch, and although these are dry to touch surface, you can't put your hand on them, because if you put your hand on them, you're going to leave big, big old fingerprints. So for the minute, obviously we've got the black colour, which is going to be the last one on. What we're going to do is just pop this in here, down this area here, so we can see how it's going to look. Okay, so what we're going to do for the minute, just start on the inside, check our flow, and then we can just cut our colour into the other one and work our way around. Now we know it's a different shade of green, so we're just going to backfill now. Got a little bit of white paint flecking through. Obviously I haven't mixed it perfectly, but shouldn't have a problem with that. So what we can do, we can have a look now just to see how these two greens are. They don't look too bad. We're looking really what I was hoping for it to look like, if we're honest. Don't forget, we're going to do some fantastic weathering on this in a moment, so it is sort of an effect, okay? So what we'll do, we'll continue this one round. See, the white paint is a little bit spitty in the mix, and that's purely because I've rushed it and haven't put it down. Remember again, don't worry about it being too pretty on this paintwork. It's going to be pretty much weathered to hell, so we're not too worried about how it's going to look. What we do need to make sure though is we've got nice joins as it goes around. So just go around, quite a bit of paint and put in a line, and then come to the inside and just fade your way back in like that, and that makes our little pattern. So again, we just backfill up here, and we're just going to pop around all the areas. So we know we've got black on the wingtip over here, and then obviously we've got black moving up into this section here, and then black's going to pull around all the front. But what we can do now is pull in this other wing. Okay, so it's the entire edge, so make sure you do the edge as well. Just going to gently build up the green, and this green is one of those ones which starts off quite light, and then give it a couple of coats it tends to darken up quite a bit. But as I say, it hasn't like that white paint going in this too much. Extra acrylics doesn't massively like Tamiya with it. It will tolerate it, but that's about as far as it goes. So we know we're just going to swing it around and looking like this. One more way back out. Okay, and then the major area where this is obviously around the front end and underneath and up on the top of the tail. So we're trying to work this so we can sort of do it without too much handling. If we're honest, what we want to do is just take this back around section off, because it will just make it easier. So we're going to go up around the tail system here. So again, we're just cutting into the colour we had before, and then backfilling. Looking a little bit wet there, so we're going to coat back. But what we're going to do, we're going to carry on going around absolutely everywhere now, patching all this in. So if you come back to me when we get to the black. Okay, so that's all on. It's all very, very wet. I'm sort of doing this all in one. Okay, in with the black. Straightforward as said. Now this is the tyre black, which is a bit of a strange colour to normally use on an aircraft, but this works quite well, especially if you lighten it as well. So usual thing, in goes 50% thinners, 50% black. We need tons in here. Now this, I don't want to lighten it too much, because obviously if you put a brush full of white into this, we're going to come out more grey than white. So what we're going to do, just take a tip of a brush, just like that, and it goes. Now by lightening it up, explain what we're going to do here. At the moment this is just the base workings to go on. Then we're going to work our way right the way through. By lightening and darkening, we're going to get a nice mottled effect, which then will give us a nice tone, a weathering. It'll look like there's been touch-ins and then bleach-ins, things like that, all the way through. You could put in replacement panels or anything you wanted to do. So for this, what we'll do is we'll just start on the black areas. So let's get our black paint coming through. Now with this, we do have to be a little bit more accurate, so make sure your airbrush is flowing well. It's not spitting, stopping, starting. Pull back your trigger, retract it all the way, blow it all the way out, so you know you've got good control. So okay, where are we going to start? We'll start first up here on this wing. Okay, so we do have to be a little bit careful. Now obviously I've cut it off quite close here. We need it to continue a lot further across. When you look at the instructions, you can see we're working on this area here. It needs to be a lot further over. So that's where we can put this in now. So what we'll do, we'll just start here, okay, and we're going to put it right the way over. Okay, the same in here. So when you're spraying, especially freehand camo like this, on a weathered distress, this works better. You want a nice feathered edge, but remember, never shoot 90 degrees straight down or towards the colour, always cut inwards. That way you'll minimise overspray going in the same direction. So that will go down. The thing you have to remember is you're coming along and spraying along here, you could get overspray down on this down under here. So that is when it's handy to have your instructions or something around just like this. And I'll show you the instructions afterwards and the reasons why we do that. As you can see, black paint. And we would normally get that, but as I said, you would come from this angle normally. Okay, there's leading edge de-icing boots on this one, so we're not too worried about the leading edges. We'll take care of them, so we just colour this in. And say we're trying to colour it quite random. Just like that. Now obviously it's looking a bit patchy, that's just because it's wet. So what we're going to do now is just carry this on all the way across the entire model until we've got it all completely painted up. Okay, so we've got the actual main camo work all done, we spoke about before. Now, as I said, when you're fading down things, they look nothing like the actual originals. Now, I've just got a few pictures off the internet here. And this is the actual one we're going to sort of model ourselves on. And I don't know how well you can actually see these, but we've got real faded in areas. The green is nothing like the green we've got down here and everything else. So what we're going to do is not copy those photos, but we're going to sort of, you know, use some of the things we're trying to do with it. So the first thing we've got here is some faded olive drab. So you can just take normal olive drab, okay, thin it down, or you can actually get the colour, which is XA 1113 if you're going to use extra acrylics, heavily thinned. And then all we do is go around everywhere, even over the black. Okay, this one's had one coat already, and this will just give it a slightly faded down colour, okay, just like this, all over the different greens, and that way it sort of unifies them in. And that's when you look at the photos of the aircraft, you can hardly see the differences in the colours on there. So now that's got some on there, what we're going to do, sticking with that olive drab colour here, we're just going to take a little bit of white, and this time we're going to make sure it has had a very good mix, and we're just going to lighten this up one stage further. Now for every time you lighten the colour, you need to doubly thin it. Two reasons for doubling thinning it. First of all, just so when we say doubling thin, obviously if you've got that amount in there, put another 50% thinners in there to double its volume. The reason for doing this is obviously it's going to give us more bleached out work, but the other thing we don't want to do is come along and automatically change its colour and make it look something else like that. So by doubling the amount of thinners in there, we'll just put a little bit more, it will make it a thinner coat, which means it won't cover straight away. Now, just to make sure you're on the right path with all of this, what we're going to do is flip this over to the underside. Okay, and we're going to just test a few little areas as we go round. So first of all, we need to blow all of that old colour through. We need to up our air pressure a little bit, so we're going to go up to around about 25 psi. We've got a little blockage in here, so we're just going to pump the trigger to make it come through. That's it. Okay, so what we're going to do is not so much cover the entire thing again with it. We're going to try and pick out centres of panels. So all we're going to do is literally just going to come around here and go to the centres of panels. Okay, and almost like a colouring in type event. Go around them all. And all we're trying to do is lightly break up the colours. So we're just going to go centres of the big flaps, inside bars. Okay, just work our way down. Okay, we've got to do the same with the black, so don't worry too much if you sort of overdo this and you go to those other areas. But what we can do, we're just going to pick out, and this should just fade in the bigger areas, and then because what we're going to do, we're going to come around afterwards and recolour in. But you might be able to see down the bottom here, we've got some nice mottling type effects going on. But these greens we're going to use are universal over any camo that's down there. Because this is quite thin, hopefully what's going to happen now is that it will just blend in, okay? It's not going to try and change colours because this is a weathering effect that's going down on here. And by the time this has got a dead black coat down in here and everything else like that, hopefully it should give us a very nice effect. In some areas you might want to give 2 coats to, some areas perhaps just the one. You know, perhaps you want to, because obviously the more you give it, the thicker you can get, but you can probably see it down here already. It's making it quite mottly as we go through. So just remember to make sure you go into absolute everything with it. Even areas you can't see too well, little patches on engines. Okay, doors, things like that. So there we go, that's automatically I don't know, it's one of those things now, how well the camera's going to pick this up, but hopefully you can see it's got quite a nice mottled effect to it. So now we've got to do that on the top. Now the top is obviously a little bit more careful because this is where your eye is going to see all this. Okay, so again, you have to think about also where are people going to look on the model. Obviously they're going to look at is around this front end here. You've got glass work. People's eye is always drawn to clear glass. Okay, so obviously you want to make sure it's all nice around the front end and also around the tail and around the ramp here, because obviously we're going to have the ramp down. People are going to look along over the back of it, over this entire area. You want it to be a more overall effect. Okay, so again, we're coming in, so we're just shooting this at around about 25 psi air pressure. Okay, and so some areas we're going to do a little bit more, but because it's thinned, you don't have to worry about actually the problem of colouring this in, because it will take a lot of coats to get this to cover in. So just, as you can see, going over between both colours. Okay, the black work we're going to do on last, and obviously it's going to get a lot more up there. Don't worry too much about these shiny spots on this. This is just obviously where you've got, you know, it's more of a glossy type finish. You can easily knock them back, just give it a slight overspray. But what we do, we're going to start with these quite wide random areas as we're putting these in, and as things get a little bit more closer to the end, we're going to tighten up and go back in with the new colour as well as faded colours. As you can see, you can almost go right over the actual black and you won't affect it. Okay, so don't be too worried about how you go about doing things. Just remember, don't try and keep it even. If you're going to do it even, you're going to come up with gritty type pattern and everything else. But hopefully you can spot this already. It's starting to fade down, give us that worn look. The black is where it will really come to life, to be honest. At the moment we're just sort of playing with it. But as soon as we come along and do the black areas, it's really going to happen. And you want to get quite a bit around areas we're going to see. So we're going to do lots around this front end and lots around this tail type areas. But it always seems a bit unnatural to people when you're doing this, because they automatically think that you're spraying a different colour over your camo work. But as I said, it's one of those ones. A lot of people ask how you get that neutral flat colour over absolutely everything. This is how we do it. So I'm just going to carry on working this round for the moment, and then we'll meet up when we start to get the next layers of weathering going on. But the black we will leave completely to last.